Have you ever wondered why so many men today are walking away from marriage? Once seen as the ultimate milestone, now it's becoming something they fear, avoid, or even reject completely. The question is, what has changed so drastically that men no longer see marriage as a win? Let's break it down. When men think about marriage today, one of the first fears that strikes them is not about love fading or compatibility issues. It's about divorce. Divorce has become so common that for many men, marriage feels less like a celebration of love and more like walking into a courtroom with a ticking time bomb. The fear of divorce and its financial consequences is one of the most powerful reasons men hesitate to marry. The reality is harsh. In many societies, when a marriage ends, men often face the heavier financial burden. Alimony, child support, division of assets, all of these become looming threats. For men, marriage doesn't just mean committing to a partner, it means entering into a legal agreement that, if broken, could cost them everything they've worked for. The house they bought, the savings they built, even their business or retirement funds, suddenly all of it can be divided or lost. Imagine a man who has spent years building his career, working long hours, sacrificing his youth to create stability. When he marries, he's not just taking on emotional responsibility, he's taking on financial risk. If the relationship falls apart, he could walk away with half of what he built, or sometimes even less. And while people often say money isn't everything, for men it represents years of sacrifice, sweat, and identity. Losing it all in a courtroom feels like a betrayal, not only by their partner, but by the very system that promised to protect them. What makes this fear even stronger is the unpredictability of divorce. Love may start strong, but relationships change, people grow apart, and resentment builds. Men know that no matter how loyal or committed they are, divorce is still a possibility. Statistics about rising divorce rates only fuel this anxiety. It's no longer just a what if. It's a very real probability. For men, stepping into marriage feels like gambling with their financial future on a game where the odds are stacked against them. Another layer to this fear is custody battles. For fathers, the heartbreak doesn't stop at financial loss. Many fear losing access to their children. Courts in many countries tend to favor mothers in custody decisions. A man could provide, love, and sacrifice for his kids, but after a divorce, he might be reduced to weekend visits and financial obligations. To him, marriage isn't just a risk to his bank account, it's a risk to his fatherhood, and society doesn't make it easier. Men are often told to man up and handle the consequences. Their emotional pain is overlooked, and their financial struggles after divorce are dismissed as part of being a man. There is little sympathy for the father who loses his home or the man who spends half his paycheck on alimony. This lack of support deepens the fear, making men feel isolated and vulnerable. On top of all this, men also witness the stories of others around them. They see friends who have been drained by years of legal battles, co-workers who lost their savings, or even celebrities who handed over millions in settlements. These stories serve as constant reminders that marriage is not just about love, it's about legal risk. And when men observe these outcomes repeatedly, it reinforces their decision to avoid marriage altogether. For men, the equation is simple. If divorce has the power to destroy both finances and emotional stability, why take the risk? The fear of financial ruin outweighs the potential happiness of marriage. It's not about being anti-love, it's about self-preservation. This fear shapes their choices, their relationships, and their willingness to commit. One of the biggest reasons men hesitate to marry today is the fear of losing their freedom and autonomy. For men, freedom is not just about coming and going as they please, it's about independence, control over their own lives, and the ability to make decisions without constant negotiation or compromise. When they think about marriage, many don't see it as a partnership of equals, but as a contract that limits their choices and cages their individuality. Before marriage, a man has complete authority over his time. He can pursue his passions, focus on his career, take risks, or even enjoy leisure without explanation. He decides when to travel, how to spend his money, and how to prioritize his goals. But within marriage, many men fear this autonomy disappears. Every decision, no matter how small, now requires discussion, approval, or compromise. Freedom gets replaced with accountability, and what once felt like independence starts to feel like permission seeking. This loss of freedom extends into lifestyle as well. A man who once spent weekends with friends, investing time in his hobbies, or exploring personal interests may suddenly find himself criticized for being selfish or immature. The freedom to live life on his own terms is replaced with the pressure to constantly adapt to someone else's expectations. For many men, this feels suffocating, like a slow erosion of who they truly are. Even personal space becomes a luxury. A bachelor's home is his sanctuary, his private world where he decides everything, from the furniture to the schedule. In marriage, this space often becomes shared, negotiated, and sometimes controlled. Men fear losing that sense of ownership over their environment, the one place where they could truly be themselves without judgment. The home, instead of feeling like a place of rest, can begin to feel like a space of surveillance. Another layer of this fear comes from the loss of spontaneity. Freedom means the ability to act in the moment, whether it's planning a sudden trip, staying out late, or making impulsive decisions without consequences. Marriage, however, often introduces structure, routines, and responsibilities that eliminate spontaneity. Men begin to feel tied down by rules and expectations, as though every choice must align with the stability of the relationship rather than their personal desires. The loss of autonomy also shows up in financial matters. A man who once had full control of his income may find that after marriage, financial decisions become joint. Spending on hobbies, investments, or personal pleasures can be scrutinized or criticized. Instead of money being a symbol of independence, it becomes a shared tool, often leading men to feel like they've lost control of the very resources they worked hard to earn. And then there's the social freedom. Before marriage, men often enjoy friendships and social circles without restrictions. But after marriage, many face limitations on who they can meet, how long they can stay out, or how much time they can spend with others outside the relationship. The fear is not just about losing friends, it's about losing an entire part of their identity, the version of themselves that existed before marriage. Men are deeply aware that once they step into marriage, their life is no longer theirs alone. It becomes a shared contract where freedom is traded for responsibility, autonomy for compromise, and independence for accountability. To some, this might sound fair, but for many men, it feels like surrendering the very essence of who they are. Another powerful reason men are stepping away from marriage is the shift in gender dynamics. For centuries, roles in relationships were clear. Men were expected to be the providers and protectors, while women managed the household and nurtured the family. That clarity gave both genders a sense of purpose and contribution. But today, the landscape looks completely different, and many men are struggling to find where they fit. In modern times, women are no longer dependent on men for financial stability. They are educated, ambitious, and capable of building careers and wealth on their own. This independence has created a new dynamic where women no longer need marriage for survival. They choose it for companionship. While this is a positive step for equality, it has also created uncertainty for men who feel their traditional role has been diminished or replaced. Men who once found pride in being the sole provider now question their value. If a woman can earn as much or sometimes even more, what unique role does a man play in the relationship? For some, this feels like competition rather than partnership. Instead of being celebrated for their efforts, men may feel overshadowed, criticized, or unnecessary. The role that once gave them identity and respect is now blurred, and with that comes a deep hesitation toward marriage. At the same time, expectations on men have not decreased. In fact, they have multiplied. Society still expects men to provide, protect, and lead, but now they must also be emotionally available, sensitive, and constantly adaptive to shifting standards. While women have embraced empowerment, many men feel they have been stripped of their traditional authority without being given a new, clearly defined purpose. This double standard leaves them confused, frustrated, and often unwilling to commit to an institution that demands so much yet offers little clarity. Another factor in this changing dynamic is the rise of hyperindependence. Some women equate equality with rejecting vulnerability altogether. Instead of partnership, marriage can turn into a power struggle where both parties are trying to assert dominance. Men sense this resistance, and instead of feeling like leaders or teammates, they begin to feel like opponents in their own relationships. This constant battle for control makes the idea of marriage feel more like a war zone than a sanctuary. Men also observe how society portrays them in modern relationships. Media often paints men as disposable, lazy, or incompetent partners who must be corrected or controlled by women. These stereotypes chip away at a man's confidence and reinforce the belief that he is no longer respected within the marriage dynamic. If the culture at large views men as unnecessary, why would they willingly walk into a system that only amplifies that feeling? On top of this, gender dynamics have introduced new pressures in terms of decision making. In the past, men were seen as the head of the household. Today, decision making is expected to be equal. While equality sounds ideal, in practice, it can lead to endless conflicts where neither partner feels fully satisfied. Men who grew up seeing traditional marriages often feel disoriented in this new model, unsure of whether they should lead, compromise, or step back entirely. The truth is, these shifts have left many men feeling like marriage no longer guarantees respect, value, or purpose. Instead of entering a partnership where roles are defined and contributions appreciated, they fear stepping into a dynamic where they will constantly be judged, challenged, or undermined. This uncertainty creates hesitation, and hesitation turns into avoidance. One of the most painful realities for men in today's world is the decline in the respect and value they receive in relationships. For centuries, respect was the cornerstone of a man's role. Even when times were tough, even when resources were limited, a man's efforts were acknowledged and appreciated. But in modern society, many men feel that the respect they once commanded has been replaced with criticism, judgment, or outright disregard. This erosion of respect is one of the biggest reasons men hesitate to marry. Men deeply crave appreciation for the roles they play and the sacrifices they make, whether it is working long hours to provide financially, enduring stress silently to protect their families, or carrying the pressure of responsibility. These actions come with a cost. In return, men expect acknowledgement, gratitude, and respect. But instead, what many receive is dismissal. Their sacrifices are often taken for granted, as if they are simply doing what they're supposed to do. Over time, this lack of acknowledgement breeds resentment and disillusionment. The decline in respect is also visible in the way men are spoken to within relationships. In past generations, even if a man wasn't perfect, his authority and contributions were respected. Today, it has become normalized to belittle, mock, or criticize men for not meeting unrealistic expectations. Jokes about men being useless or childlike have become part of mainstream culture, reinforcing the message that they are undervalued. Men internalize these messages, and the result is a deep hesitation to commit to a system that seems designed to undermine them. Respect is not just about words, it is about how a man is treated in everyday life. In many relationships, men feel that their opinions, preferences, and boundaries are not taken seriously. Decision making often turns into power struggles where a man's input carries little weight. The lack of value placed on his perspective sends a clear message. His role is not as important as it once was. For men, this absence of respect makes marriage look less like a partnership and more like a battle for recognition. This decline also extends into the societal view of men. In movies, advertisements, and social media, men are often portrayed as lazy, irresponsible, or emotionally unavailable. Rarely are they celebrated as loyal partners, strong protectors, or dedicated fathers. These negative stereotypes condition women to see men as inadequate and men to see themselves as unworthy. The ripple effect is that men feel constantly judged, never good enough, and always replaceable. If society does not respect men, why would they expect respect within marriage? Another reason men feel undervalued is the shift in how love and commitment are expressed. In the past, loyalty and effort were enough to earn appreciation. Today, many men feel they must constantly prove their worth with material things, constant emotional validation, or grand gestures. No matter how much they provide, it often feels like it's never enough. This endless demand without corresponding respect pushes men to conclude that marriage is not worth the emotional drain. Men also observe how respect plays out in divorces. A man who once sacrificed everything for his family can end up stripped of his resources, separated from his children, and spoken of as if he never contributed at all. The respect he hoped for during the marriage disappears the moment things fall apart. These stories become warnings, reminding men that their value is conditional and fleeting. At the heart of it, respect and value are not luxuries for men, they are necessities. Without them, marriage feels empty, even hostile. A man who senses that he will be undervalued in the very institution that demands his lifelong commitment will naturally hesitate. For him, it is not just about love, it is about dignity, acknowledgement, and worth. Another key reason men are rejecting marriage is the rise of alternative lifestyles. In the past, marriage was seen as the only respectable pathway to companionship, intimacy, and family. But today, the world looks very different. Men are no longer confined to one option. They have access to multiple alternatives that provide many of the same benefits of marriage without the risks, the sacrifices, or the permanent binding contract. Cohabitation, for example, has become normalized. Living together without marriage used to be frowned upon, but now it is widely accepted. This option gives men the experience of partnership, companionship, and even family life without signing legal papers that could later be used against them. If the relationship works, they enjoy the benefits. If it doesn't, they can leave without the crushing weight of divorce settlements, alimony, or custody battles. For many men, this flexibility feels safer and more practical. Casual relationships and dating culture also play a huge role. With apps and social media, men have more access to potential partners than ever before. Intimacy, which was once strongly tied to marriage, is now available without commitment. Men no longer have to marry to fulfill physical or emotional needs. The availability of short term connections makes marriage look less like a necessity and more like an outdated institution. Another lifestyle alternative that appeals to men is focusing entirely on self development and personal growth. Instead of investing years into building a marriage, many men are pouring that time and energy into careers, businesses, fitness, or passions. They see marriage as something that could drain resources, while a single lifestyle gives them full control over where their time, money, and energy go. This self focused lifestyle gives them a sense of progress and independence that marriage might restrict. Travel and global mobility also contribute to this shift. Men now have the option to live abroad, explore cultures, or move frequently for career opportunities. Marriage, with its responsibilities and obligations, can feel like an anchor that prevents this kind of freedom. Alternative lifestyles allow men to prioritize adventure and exploration over settling down too early or tying themselves to one place. Even the concept of fatherhood has alternatives now. Some men choose to have children later in life through surrogacy or other arrangements without the need for marriage. This option was not widely accessible in the past, but with modern technology and changing social attitudes, men realize they can still experience fatherhood without entering a marital contract. For those who fear losing custody or being separated from their children through divorce, this route feels safer. Another influence is the rise of digital communities. Online spaces, whether for friendship, hobbies, or shared interests, provide a sense of belonging and companionship. In previous generations, men relied on marriage to avoid loneliness or to create a social circle. Today, digital platforms fill that gap. Men can connect with like-minded individuals across the world, build strong bonds, and feel supported without needing a spouse to fulfill that role. The financial angle of alternative lifestyles also cannot be ignored. Without marriage, men can build wealth, invest, and spend their money as they see fit. They don't have to factor in shared accounts, spousal expectations, or the potential of losing half of their assets in a divorce. For men who have seen others financially devastated by failed marriages, this freedom to control their own resources feels far more appealing. The truth is, alternatives to marriage are everywhere today. Cohabitation, casual dating, personal growth, travel, technology, and independent fatherhood. These options give men the benefits they desire while protecting them from the risks they fear. With so many pathways available, marriage is no longer seen as the only route to happiness, companionship, or success. One of the most powerful forces shaping men's hesitation toward marriage is mistrust, fueled by both personal experiences and the stories they witness around them. Trust is the foundation of any lifelong commitment, but when men have seen betrayal, manipulation, or abandonment play out repeatedly, they begin to question whether marriage is truly safe. For many, the fear isn't hypothetical. It comes from real scars that continue to shape how they view relationships. Personal heartbreak is one of the strongest contributors. A man who has invested his time, energy, and emotions into a relationship only to be betrayed or abandoned rarely walks away unaffected. That betrayal creates a wound, and with it, a defense mechanism. He learns that love is not always permanent, that words of commitment can vanish overnight, and that even loyalty does not guarantee stability. When he carries those lessons forward, marriage begins to look less like a promise and more like a gamble. For some, the mistrust doesn't even stem from their own relationships. It comes from what they see happening to others. Men watch their friends lose everything in a divorce, witness their fathers being disrespected or mistreated, or see co-workers dragged through years of custody battles. These stories are not forgotten. They serve as warnings. They create a subconscious belief that marriage is dangerous territory, one that could strip them of both dignity and stability. Mistrust is also amplified by cultural shifts in dating and relationships. The rise of casual dating, social media, and endless options has created an environment where loyalty feels fragile. Men see how easily connections are replaced, how quickly partners can move on, and how often cheating scandals surface. These observations fuel the belief that marriage cannot guarantee exclusivity or long term commitment. For a man who values loyalty above all else, this uncertainty becomes a wall that keeps him from pursuing marriage. Another layer is the lack of fairness men perceive in the legal and social systems surrounding marriage. They see how divorce laws often favor women in matters of custody and finances. They see how men's emotional struggles during breakups are minimized while their financial responsibilities are maximized. This imbalance creates a deep mistrust, not only of relationships, but of the system itself. Men begin to feel that even if they choose the right partner, the legal framework is stacked against them. Past experiences with disrespect also feed into this mistrust. Men who have been belittled, constantly criticized, or emotionally manipulated in relationships develop a natural resistance. They fear that marriage will magnify these patterns, turning temporary frustrations into lifelong struggles. Once a man has been in a situation where he felt undervalued or controlled, he becomes far more cautious about signing up for a permanent commitment. The mistrust is not only emotional but psychological. Many men struggle to forget the moments when their loyalty was questioned, their intentions were misunderstood, or their sacrifices were overlooked. Even if they eventually heal, the memory of those experiences shapes their behavior. They carry the mindset that trust can be broken at any time, and instead of risking their peace again, they choose to avoid the institution of marriage altogether. What makes mistrust so powerful is its ability to linger. A man may move on, find new relationships, or even experience love again, but deep down, the fear remains. It whispers that no matter how good things seem, they can collapse without warning. This constant doubt is enough to keep him guarded. And when marriage is on the table, mistrust becomes the loudest voice, reminding him of everything he could lose if things go wrong.